What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, consciousness, and spirituality. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Hayden Lee, a master certified executive life and leadership coach. He also works with successful executives, leaders, business owners, and entrepreneurs who are ready to do the deeper transformational work to create their next level of success and fulfillment. And he's also an Enneagram specialist and loves using the Enneagram system of development to help people have a deeper understanding of who they are, why they do what they do, and how they can create a path of development for themselves. And I had the lovely pleasure of connecting with Hayden at a number of conferences that we're both a part of, and we dove a little deep in the world of the Enneagram. So I'm extremely excited to have him on the show. So welcome to the show, Hayden.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Likewise. So Hayden, to kick it off, can you describe what the Enneagram is exactly to our audience?
Of course, many people may have heard of the Enneagram, and on the surface, the most simple explanation is people call it a personality assessment or maybe a personality, typing sort of assessment. And on the surface, I think it could, on the simplest terms, one could say it's a personality test or assessment. But I like to go much deeper. I describe the Enneagram as a system of personal and professional development. The reason why I call it a system is because if it was just a personality test or assessment, it would just tell you what your type is. And the Enneagram actually goes much deeper, that while it does help you understand your core type, it also provides a roadmap to help you develop into your higher self, into a more fulfilled self, into a more effective self. So I really describe it as a system or even a map to help you navigate on your journey of development into becoming the better version of yourself.
Hmm. So, why did you want to study it? Why did you feel compelled to dedicate so much of your life to this work?
I came across the Enneagram when I first did coach training in 2011. So that was many years ago when I started uh, my training. And I actually started my coach training working with young adults and teenagers. And what many people say about the Enneagram is not that you find the Enneagram, but it's that the Enneagram finds you. And what I mean by that is when I first took this training, I was working in Los Angeles as an SAT tutor. And for those who don't know, the SAT is a scholastic aptitude test, which high school students in the United States, take in order to apply to colleges. So I was helping a lot of young people with doing better on the SATs. I was also helping young people write their college admissions essays as a tutor. And while I was doing this work, I was working with many teenagers, 15, 16, 17 years old as a tutor. And as a tutor, my role was to help them take the test better, really, to understand the academic material to take the test better. However, I was fascinated with having deeper conversations with these young people because they were about to embark on the journey of the lifetime, going to college, finding their place in the world, navigating their self and the impact they want to make on the world. And those are the types of questions I really wanted to talk to these young people about. I wasn't as interested to let them know the best strategy to get an A on the test. I wanted to know about them as people. What were you passionate about? What is the impact you want to make on the world? What kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? And for the most part, most of these young adults had never been asked these questions before. They were like, what are you talking about? The point of college is to get a job, and the point of a job is to make money. And that started bothering me because I saw so much potential and creativity and in these people, and they didn't think about these deeper questions about themselves. So that's what initially drew me to coaching in the first place, was because coaching is designed to help the individual, dive deeper within themselves in order to really tap into their potential. So that's when I first took this coach training program. It was called Academic Life Coaching, and it was specifically geared towards working with teenagers to help them have a greater sense of self, increase their self-awareness, become better leaders in their lives. And part
Mm.
of that training was something simply called core motivation. It wasn't even called, Enneagram. It was called core motivation, which was based on the Enneagram. So it wasn't a secret that it was based on the Enneagram, but the creator of the Academic Life Coaching program simply wrote out 9 paragraphs. Each paragraph described the core motivation of the 9 Enneagram types. And when I say core motivation, that's really the basis of the Enneagram, which is it's not based so much on your behavior patterns or your kind of personality traits. It's more based on what drives you as a human being. And the Enneagram system believes that there's 9 main drivers of humanity, in the sense that there's 9 main core motivations that drive humans. And although we have all of the 9 motivations within us to some extent, there is one that is your core that really stands out more than the rest.
Mm.
So then when I learned about these core motivations, um, it was so fascinating. I used this with my teenage clients. And how I used it at this point was just reading through the 9 paragraphs with them, seeing which one or two they resonated with, and they all had aha moments and insights. And then the ones that they chose, the top 2 that they chose, we created a development plan, an action plan from there, meaning which of these types, or in your type, where were their blind spots? What were their strengths? What were their weaknesses? How can you do things differently than your default way of doing things? So
Mm.
that was the first time how the Enneagram found me, was through this academic life coaching program for teenagers. And from there, though, I was fascinated with these 9 paragraphs. So I did more study and research into the Enneagram itself. And then I can tell you more about the trajectory of what happened from there, but I'll take a pause to see your
Yes.
insights or questions so far.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that context. I don't think I was aware that you started out coaching teenagers, and that's so phenomenal that you got a chance to work with folks at that age and that kind of juncture in life, because it's so impactful. And I want to dive into the 9, Enneagram types, you call it core motivations, and in particular, like the strengths and the weaknesses of each. And, before we go into a little bit more about maybe 1 or 2 types as an example, and I'd love to even just use mine as an example or maybe
Mhm.
yours, is, what the strengths and weaknesses are of all of the 9. If you have, capacity to just share a little bit from each of these, even though I know we could spend hours on each one.
Absolutely. Yeah, before I start with going deeper into your core Enneagram type, I want to paint a picture, though, of an iceberg, right? So, what I believe makes the Enneagram different is that there's a lot of depth to it. So, if we think about an iceberg, a simple personality test really just addresses the top of the iceberg, which is the personality traits that you see, whether someone is outgoing or talkative or really assertive or really quiet. Um, the Enneagram encompasses the bottom of the iceberg as well, which is the reasons why people do what they do. So there's a lot of depth to it, um, in terms of understanding why we do what we do. And then it even addresses some of the core fears we have, the values of each type. So, really, I see it as a rich, a system that really helps you have a deeper sense of yourself, not just your patterns or your preferences, but really why you do it. And that's why it's called core motivation. It really drives you. So, with that said, there are the 9 types of the Enneagram. Each type has the capacity to be an amazing leader, an amazing person. There's no right or wrong type. That's important to emphasize. It's not about wanting to change your type, but it's about really learning to become the most healthy expression of your type. So, oftentimes, the first step is really embracing your type, not to reject it, it's to understand it and to embrace it, because every type is amazing in its own right. It's learning how to leverage your strengths and manage some of the weaknesses. So, for example, your core type, I believe you said, is type 8. Is that correct, Yasmin?
Yes, but before we go into mine, I was wondering
Yeah.
if you could actually paint a picture of all 9.
Oh,
And then, yeah, we could use mine as an example after that. But I just want folks to start to think about like what their type might be, and just some of the highlights of each.
great. Thank you for that. Yes, I'll go through all 9 types right now, and I'll explain the core motivation of each type and some, strengths and weaknesses of each type. So I'll start with the first type, and the types are numbered 1 through 9, and that's just the sequence with which it's numbered. It doesn't mean it's in ranking. It's not a ranking. So, so type 1 is often called the perfectionist, right? And the core motivation of type 1 is the need to be right and to do the right thing and to be good. So some of the strengths of type 1, it's they have a lot of attention to detail. They have strong principles. They want to do the right thing. They want to do what's good. They're striving for perfection. And this can be in the sense of perfection of self or perfecting a system, or even sometimes wanting someone else, to be perfect. So, of course, we know perfection doesn't exist. So, every strength and excess can become a weakness. So, the strengths of the type 1 perfectionist is they have a strong attention to detail, they have high standards. And then in excess, though, that's where it could also be the challenge, where they could be very critical of themselves,
Mm.
very critical of other people. And it can even be judgmental. If they don't see something that meets their high standards, then they can actually become frustrated or angry, and they may not express that anger because it's not nice and polite to be angry, so they can even hold that in. So that's the one. Did
That's
you
the
want to
one
add
we know.
something? Yeah.
I just wanted to say, definitely know a lot of people who are ones.
Yeah, I mean, we need ones. We need people to be structured and organized. And then also, like I said, ones, if things aren't going how they think they should go, like oftentimes I say ones should all over themselves, um, they can be quite angry and upset, and they may not express that. So I encourage ones to find ways to, express their angers or frustrations in a healthy way, which might not seem as critical to others or as critical of themselves.
And, you also, I think maybe have mentioned this before, but there's like ones who are like in their power, integrated versus disintegrated, right? Because not all folks, share or I guess express outwardly their shadow side of
Mm,
their type, right? Especially if they've done a lot of work with integration.
absolutely. So I'm glad you used the word integration. Integration in this sense means really accessing all parts of the Enneagram, all parts of the developmental system to really become a more like well-balanced, healthy expression of oneself. So as I'm going through these 9 types right now, I'm painting a pretty broad brush. But you're right, it becomes very nuanced because each person is individual, each person is complex. So yes, a type 1 and any of the Enneagram types, when they're more integrated, meaning accessing more parts of the Enneagram into becoming a balanced self, they sometimes don't even seem like their core type anymore because they have done a lot of work. They're able to be more balanced and use other parts of the Enneagram, not just relying on like the strongest characteristics of their core type. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll move on to Enneagram type 2, which is oftentimes called the helper. So the motivation of type 2 is the need to be liked and appreciated. And the behavior of the 2 could be very helpful and generous and kind. They're always thinking of other people. How can they serve other people? They love to help. They love to be of service. And there is that every strength and excess can become a weakness, whereas with type 2s, oftentimes they forget about themselves or they forget to put themselves first because they're always putting other people first. It's very hard for them to say no. They say yes. It's hard for them to have boundaries. I mean, 2s are wonderful to be around because they're always there to lend a helping hand. They are always give you compliments, and they want you to be at your best, and they want to set you up for success. Um, where it starts becoming a challenge for 2s, though, is maybe they're helping too much, or they don't take care of themselves, and their own health or their own goals get put to the wayside. And then sometimes the 2s may become resentful because they're helping so much. And remember, their motivation is to be liked and appreciated. So if they feel like people aren't appreciating their efforts, then they might get angry or get resentful. And oftentimes when I work with 2s, after I remind them, if when they're feeling resentful, are they even doing something for someone that person asked for? Oftentimes they find themselves doing all these things for people and then getting upset that no one's recognizing it. Yet then they realize, wait a second, no one even asked for me to do this for them. And I'm upset that they're not thanking me for doing it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that happens with 2s. And then and oftentimes with 2s, they are very helpful, very caring, very generous people. And I call it cringe moments or eek moments. Is the Enneagram, the more you work with it and the more you learn it, each type has like an eek factor, or like, gosh, I
Mm.
can't believe I do that. And that's a good thing. That emotional, visceral reaction to your type is an indication that it's probably true, right? That we're on the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
track. So with 2s, sometimes there is a darker side where there might be some manipulation happening, where it's called give to get, where they're
Mm.
so generous and they're so giving of their time and energy, but it's because they want something in return. And it's usually not malicious, and it's usually not even conscious, but they realize that they really like feeling appreciated. They like being needed. They like being liked. And that in itself is not true altruism, which is okay. But if they have a hard time admitting that, because they may believe, no, I truly just love to help. Yet then I'm like, but what happens when you don't get the appreciation? Then why
Mm.
might get upset? So I'm like, so you do like something in return. And that's where it's some big growth edge for 2s to admit that they have needs and that they like to be liked and wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That also resonates. I tend to really gravitate towards 2s, as we'll probably get into later, why 8s and 2s get along.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, in a nutshell, eights, which is your core type, may be more easy for you to ask for what you want. And then twos love to give people what they want, right? So if you're open to asking for what you want and they love to give people what they want, then that could oftentimes be a good collaboration, as long as it's balanced. Yeah.
Yeah, I do like asking for what I want.
Yes. Well, which is wonderful, right? It's
Yeah.
that, the what is that saying, that it's like the mouth that gets fed, or the one that asks for, I don't remember what the saying is, but something about, those who ask for what they want are the ones that get it. So
Yep, yep.
yeah.
Hungry mouths get fed. Or what is it? Hold on. Actually, I don't remember. What is it? It's like those who ask get fed or something like that.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. There is something about, like those who speak up get fed. I don't know, so we'll have to find that quote at some point. Um, but moving along, then we're moving to type 3, which is the achiever. And the motivation for the achiever is to be the best and to outshine the rest. So, strengths of the threes, they're ambitious, they're competitive, they like to get stuff done, they like to win. This happens to be my core type. Uh, I love to be efficient. I love to win and set goals and crush those goals. Um, However, the challenges of the three, maybe sometimes they're focused too much on the outcome and not the process, right?
Mm,
Or they're focused on the task and not the person. They're more, and in extreme unhealthy expressions of three, they may actually like use people, or they're so transactional that they don't build relationships. They only see the results. And because threes want to be successful and want to look successful, they might even be deceptive to themselves or deceptive to other people in order to look successful and flattering,
mm,
right? So threes, it's very challenging for threes to be vulnerable because they don't want to talk about their failures. They don't want to talk about their mistakes because that doesn't make them look good. But we both know that in the journey of higher consciousness, we need to address our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities. And actually, the more you share them and talk about them, it's actually quite inspiring for others. It can help lift people up. But threes, when they're on autopilot, it's definitely not their default to talk about their weaknesses. They only want to talk about their strengths.
Yep. Amazing. Okay. And then fours?
Yeah, fours are the creative. So their motivation is to be unique and authentic. So they are always they think differently, they want to look different. Oftentimes they can think outside the box. And because their motivation is to be, unique and authentic, they actually might dress differently, even have like, you know, pink hair, but it's really more about that they feel misunderstood, and they always feel kind of like the black sheep. And it's both like a strength and a weakness of theirs, where as like they want to stand out and be different, and the same token they feel like that differentness leads to feeling misunderstood, so they're always longing to feel
Mm,
heard. They're
mm,
always longing, or they're always focused on what's missing. They're always searching for more meaning. They're always, so that's the darker side. But at the same token, they love the darker side, where they're not afraid to talk more about like things other people don't want to talk about, like suffering or things related to like death or dying. I feel like, Tim Burton, might be an Enneagram 4, in the sense of like, all of his storytelling is kind of dark and macabre. And there's these characters of, I'm thinking of the Winona Ryder character in Beetlejuice, like this long
yeah.
suffering, no one understands me. But so it's almost like they enjoy the suffering in a way, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Um, and then we have type 5, which is the thinker, or sometimes called the specialist, meaning their motivation is to deeply understand. They need to make sense of things objectively, right? So whereas I was just talking about the Enneagram type 4, who feels a lot of emotions, feels a lot of suffering, has deep emotion. Enneagram 5, not so much deep emotion, they're more about deep knowledge. So they need to understand things objectively, need to make sense of things. So obviously some of their great strengths is knowledge and asking lots of questions, wanting to see things objectively, not getting clouded by emotions because they can compartmentalize their emotions. Yet then, of course, the challenges is that they may be unsentimental, which could lead to not connecting with others or focusing too much on the you know knowledge and information side of things rather than the relational side of things, right? So it could also lead to them, in a way, missing out on life because they're focused on understanding it from an intellectual sense, but not experiencing it, right? When I work with fives, I say, what do you think would help you understand, France, the country of France more, like reading every book about France or actually going to France, right? Like, I believe going to France would help you experience it better than just intellectually learning about it from a book. So when it comes to life, it's the same thing. Like with fives, they want to know everything and understand everything about life, yet are they actually getting outside to experience life? Right?
Right.
I want to make sure that they're not missing life, because that's the best way to understand something is to experience it.
That's powerful. Yep. Okay. And then six, I actually don't know as much about six compared to the others.
Yeah, so six is often it could be called the skeptic, or the loyal skeptic, because the core motivation of a six is to be safe and to belong and to be prepared. So I think most of the times the kind of the stereotype of the six is that they're skeptical and maybe like paranoid and anxious, but it comes from the core motivation to be safe and to be prepared. So from the six's point of view, they may be risk averse. They're asking tons of questions, but it's from a place of safety. So that's where I also want to shed light on the loyal part of the six, which is they've got your back, meaning they want everyone to have a sense of belonging and security. Because one of the ways that sixes feel safe is through having trusted relationships with people. So they're very loyal, meaning even though they may ask a lot of questions and sometimes it may seem as they're being negative, it's because they want to be prepared and they want to make sure that they're prepared and you're prepared. Right, so they're always got everyone's back. They know where the exits are. They got the hand sanitizer. They have the plan B and plan C, but they've also have the plan B and plan C. They thought of it for you too. So there's that loyalty piece. But yeah, sixes at their best, like I said, they're loyal. They focus on teamwork and collaboration because they want everyone to have a sense of belonging. That gives them a lot of safety and security. They have a lot of courage at their best because they've thought about all the fears, but they'll still take action anyways if they really believe it's the best path forward. And then some of their challenges, of course, maybe if they succumb to their fears too much, or they let the worst case scenarios stop them from taking action, and maybe projection too. If trust is very important for Enneagram sixes, but then if they're not mindful, they may be trying to test m- their trust with someone else, but as a result, they may behave in a way where the other person might not be able to trust them. So all of a sudden, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that neither one can trust each other, right?
Mm.
Um,
I
yeah.
I
So does
heard.
that? Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
that
ahead.
that that sounds right. I heard that six is also. I just maybe this is not correct, but what I heard is that sixes often will share, because this is something that deeply irritates eights, that they share kind of personal information about a relationship or about things that feel like more private with their greater groups and relationships just all around. They sort of because of this safety element, because there's always like this inquiry, there's a desire to share a lot more information in a more open space with everyone around them. And I know that we haven't gotten to the eight yet, but I know for eights, loyalty and I would say even privacy feels like pretty important.
I would say, I mean, with what you just shared, not sure if it's like a defining characteristic of six, but I would definitely think that, yeah, in a trusted group, they would do that if there's a lot of trust and intimacy. Um, or something else that comes up for me is, we there's actually, a lot of nuances to the Enneagram. Because
Yeah.
within each of the 9 core types, there's something called subtypes, and we probably won't have enough time to get into that today. But in a nutshell, subtypes is that each of the 9 core types are divided into 3 subtypes. And the 3 subtypes are something based on the 3 human instincts of either self-preservation, one-on-one, or social. And then, so there's actually 27 Enneagram types in total because there's 9 core types, and each core type is divided into a subtype. What makes the 6 interesting is there is one of the subtypes of 6 is called the counterphobic 6. And the counterphobic 6 is the 6 that doesn't act like a 6, because even though they have the motivation to be safe and they have that anxiety, their reaction to it is to face fear in the face, or to confront fear in the face. Meaning, like, if they're really afraid of heights, so they're going to go skydiving to prove to themselves that they're not afraid of it. So the reason why I'm sharing this is because maybe it may be the counterphobic 6 who they're trying to test people's loyalty by sharing personal information, even though it's like edgy for them, and they don't. That's their way to test the trust. So if that kind of makes sense, it's the opposite of what one would think to do to build trust, is to share this type of personal information in a big group, that they might be doing it to see if they could trust the other people, or to intimidate people as a way to earn trust and test loyalty.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
very fascinating. Yeah, that counterphobic 6. All right, so move into type 7, which is the visionary, or type 7 could be the visionary, or called the enthusiastic visionary. So their motivation is to experience life fully. So sevens, whereas 6s may sometimes think about what could go wrong, 7s are oftentimes what could go right, meaning life is meant to be lived. It's an adventure. They're full of optimism, full of fun and play and joy. So 7s' minds move very fast. They're oftentimes like doing many different things, starting many different projects, and while they're doing one thing, they're already thinking about what they want to do next, right? So their mind is always focused on the future, lots of ideas. And while I said they may start a lot of projects, they don't finish many of them, right? Because sometimes, they want to also avoid pain. So their motivation is to experience life fully and also avoid pain. And pain in this sense could be things that are boring or challenging, or if there's like uncomfortable feelings, they don't want to think about it. So then that's why sometimes they start a lot of projects, but if they hit a roadblock, or if it gets really hard, or if it gets a little bit boring, they may stop and start something else. Which of course could be the challenge of a 7, is they might not follow through on a lot of things, or they might jump around a lot, where in their mind it might make sense, but if the person they're speaking with may have a hard time keeping up with what they're saying, because there's a lot of ideas that are jumping around. Yeah. But 7s are definitely a lot of fun to be around.
Yes, yes, yes. I think I have a 7 wing, so that's my.
Yeah.
Do you want to briefly talk about wings?
Yeah, so wings is interesting. So each Enneagram type has 2 wings, and the wings are the numbers on either side of you. It's the adjacent numbers, because the Enneagram system, if you were to see the symbol, it's a circle with 9 points on it. So whichever your core type is, there's a point to your right and to your left is adjacent, to your type. And the reason why we call them wings is because it takes 2 wings to fly. Meaning, when you access both wings, you can really develop faster and really become more well-rounded. So your core type is an 8, right? So that means that you have wings of 7 and 9. And you usually use one wing more than the other. So it sounds like you use your 7 wing more than your 9 wing, right? So I'll talk about 8 and 9 right now. So your core type, you said, is Enneagram type 8, which is sometimes called the controller or the active controller, because the core motivation of an 8 is to be strong and to have a sense of control and to avoid expressing vulnerability. So, of course, 8s are natural leaders. They like to take charge. They ask for what they want. They can be assertive and direct, which are great strengths. They stand for justice. They want to stand up for what's right and speak up for the underdog. They might, take people under their wing. Social justice is very important for eights, but eights also don't like fakeness. They want people to be honest and direct. They don't like to beat around the bush, and they definitely can get things done, which are great strengths. And then, of course, the challenge, though, kind of goes back to every strength and excess could become a weakness. So, assertive is good, but then aggressive could be not, right? Then that can be destructive, or it could even turn into, being too judgmental of others, or saying things that could be insulting to other people. Whereas the eight may not see it as insulting. They may see it as like, well, I'm just telling it how it is. But then if it starts becoming counterproductive and they're making a negative impact around them, that's when they need to really be more mindful of, how they're communicating with people. And then you have how the wings work is, so your core type is the eight, and then you have the seven, a lot of the seven energy, meaning while you are eight as your core type, you borrow a lot of the seven attributes, meaning you also like to experience lots of things, have lots of ideas, like to have fun. And I'll talk about the nine in just a second, as you could also use more of the nine to balance out your seven, so you can be a more well-rounded eight. But what jumps out at you so far about what I talked about in terms of the eightness?
Yeah, no, it feels like definitely spot on. I think I've heard the eight referred to as like the challenger, not afraid to kind of challenge folks around them or the status quo. And, I think in my journey of kind of evolving and growing, I've definitely have noticed that I've switched from, certain wings, like, maybe even moving from focusing a little bit more on my seven wing to now more my nine wing. And I think when we first met, you had said something along the lines of like eights are the most misunderstood in the Enneagram. And they're sort of like the analogy that you gave, which I thought was so adorable, was, they're like marshmallows wrapped in barbed wire. And I really appreciated hearing that, because it's interesting. There is and I think, there's I think a moment in the journey of integration where you don't realize, your sort of the disintegration until it becomes apparent in the external world. And then, of course, like I feel like now I don't go towards the shadow side of the eight, and it's just something that it's amazing that it's in my awareness now, right? Like how you communicate matters, and it's interesting because like I used to live in New York City, where and grew up in a Middle Eastern household. So I think as an eight, it didn't actually necessarily matter how one communicated, because it was so culturally accepted to kind of be direct. And I think now living in California for about 10 years, there is definitely a difference in direct communication in California and how that's perceived. And so it's been like a really fun boot camp for an eight to experience that sort of, just the mindfulness of how to communicate. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Enneagram 8 can also be called Challenger, and I think sometimes Defender too. So the nickname of it, it can change based on who's speaking about it, or maybe which specific assessment you took, but the numbers are consistent. So with the 8, yes, I believe they're the most misunderstood type, because people see them, their outward appearance. They are strong, they are assertive, yet there's a huge like heart inside. That's why I call them the marshmallows wrapped in barbed wire. There's a softness inside, a huge heart, a huge capacity to love, really wanting to take care of people, and really a sensitivity and even insecurity inside that they don't show. Because remember, the motivation of A, not only is it to be strong and have a sense of control, there's also avoiding expressing vulnerability, right? Because eights don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to be taking advantage of, because they may see vulnerability as a weakness. And as I'm hearing from you, as you've done a lot of work to realize that, sometimes vulnerability is a strength. Most of the times vulnerability is a strength, and it allows you to connect with people more.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm curious now, like we have one more, the 9.
hmm So the nine, rounds out the nine types, and the nine is called the peacemaker, or sometimes called the adaptive peacemaker. I think sometimes it may even be called the mediator. But the reason why is because the motivation of the nine is to really have balance and peace and to be settled in the world. So as a result of that, they want to avoid conflict. They want to keep the peace. Um, they want everyone to have a sense of harmony. They want everyone to have a sense of balance. So oftentimes they may not speak up right away, or they'll just kind of make sure everyone's getting along. Sometimes we say nines go along to get along, right? Meaning they don't really want to rock the boat. So I think that's a great quality, is that nines really want to bring people together, and they're pretty easygoing. Um, they're pretty accepting. They're non-judgmental. Yet, of course, the challenge, though, is they may forget their own voice, right? They're so accommodating, they may not know what they want. They may forget about their own dreams and goals. And then also, they may not even address when they're angry, or they may not even know when they're angry. So that could come off as passive aggressive. Whereas an eight, we were talking about, maybe they'll be, if they're angry, they will tell you. A nine may not. One, because they might not even know they're angry until much later after an incident has happened, or they don't want to rock the boat, or they're afraid of the conflict. Yeah, with nines, oftentimes what we say is when nines don't speak up in order to keep the peace, they start a war within themselves.
Ooh, wow.
So they can become that volcano of that dormant energy and then one day they just can't take it, they may explode, which of course is not healthy. So nines learning to speak up in the moment is very powerful. And for nines to identify what it is they want and to go after it is very powerful.
Mm. I love that. This is a really beautiful way to describe the 9 different core motivations. So I'm curious, what are some of the themes that have come out of the work of not just the Enneagram, but also just like working with executives
Mm.
on understanding themselves better through this type of work?
Yeah, I believe that, you know, leadership always starts with leading yourself, right? And leading yourself to me means making sure that your intent aligns with your impact, right? So when we understand that, intent we want to make on the world, what our purpose is, we want to make sure that the impact we're having is in alignment with our intention. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. And, with the Enneagram specifically, it is a great roadmap to um, help us be more aware of, oh, is my impact actually landing the way that I want? Like you said, as an Enneagram 8, I know that you want to make a strong impact. You want to help people reach higher levels of consciousness, but then sometimes your impact may not be that, right? You may say something in a way that doesn't land the way you want.
Right.
So the more self-aware you are, one, the more aware you are of if your intent and impact are in alignment, and also create systems to improve oneself. So in my coaching, I believe everyone has the capacity to be a really great leader, starting with leading themselves in the sense of that they're making the impact they want to make in the way that they want to make it.
I love that so much. And, what are some of the maybe ways that you help clients overcome fear or self limiting beliefs? I'm just, curious, like, how do you dive deeper and, how do you guide individuals from a place of fear to fulfillment or empowerment?
Mm. I believe we all have fear in one way, shape, or form, and it's really identifying what the limiting belief is, and then crossing that limiting belief out, and then writing in an empowering belief, and then coming from a place of being is that what would you do if you believed that, because you might not believe it yet, but it's I believe that confidence is a result of taking action, right? So if someone has a limiting belief, let's say that they're not good enough for something, and I'm like, well, let's cross that out. What is the opposite of that? And it would be, let's say I am good enough to do XYZ. And they may not believe it yet, but I'm like, well, if you, from that place, what is one action you would take if you believed you are good enough to do X, Y, Z? And then it would be, one action I would take is I would make that phone call and, ask for what I want, let's say. And then I have them follow through on that action, even though they're like scared and terrified. And I have them focus on the process, not the outcome. If they get the outcome they want as a result of that phone call, that's like bonus points. But it's really the focus on the process of doing something that is scary, but doing it from a place of courage. And the more action you take, the more confidence you get at something. Right. So I guess that's helping people identify a limiting belief, changing to an empowering belief, and then what is one action that someone would take from that empowering belief? And I focus on being a lot. Who do you want to be moving forward? What is a change you need to make in order to be that person you want to be?
Right, right, right. I love that. That's really in alignment with also just my work, which is like shifting your identity to the person, that you would like to become, right? Like, or shifting
Mm.
like your mindset um, to stretch a little bit in terms of your awareness, your perception, what you think is possible. So I'm also curious. You do work with neuroscience, right? Um, I'm curious, what the intersection of neuroscience and coaching feels like a fascinating intersection. So how do you leverage some insights from the world of neuroscience to sort of enhance your coaching effectiveness and facilitate like lasting change for your clients?
Yeah, I have the honor of working with two neuroscientists. I partner with Dr. Kelly Kent and Dr. Anne-Marie Seco, and they're amazing. And we collaborate, and we created a course called the Neuroscience of Coaching. And the Neuroscience of Coaching is specifically teaching coaches, neuroscience information to help their clients like have more aha moments by understanding how their brain works. And then they're the PhDs and neuroscientists, and I'm the coach. So I like to say I break it down in the layperson's terms so that people can really understand the science in a practical way. And there's so many fascinating things about the brain, like different regions of the brain, so many nuances. But I would say the most important thing I've learned about neuroscience and how it connects to coaching is the brain's neuroplasticity, right? And I now use the word neuroplasticity in everyday language, but it wasn't always that way, But I love, I define neuroplasticity as the brain's, endless ability to continue to build neural pathways and continue to grow with deliberate practice. And I say deliberate practice, meaning you have to have intention to want to get better at a certain skill set, and you have to get feedback on it, and then you apply that feedback, and then the more you do it, your brain literally can grow. You can make your brain heavier, which is so cool. And I think that really is the basis of coaching, is really one, understanding that anything with which you choose to get better at, you can. The brain is capable of building more neural pathways. And when I say building more neural pathways, meaning the stronger the neural pathway is for, let's say, riding a bike, the better I get at riding a bike. But the first time I ride a bike, I'm going to fall because I don't have strong neural pathways for riding a bike yet. But the more I ride that bike, learn how to pedal better, implement the new technique, it will reinforce, those neural pathways, and then I get better and better riding a bike. So everything's a skill set, not just hard skills like riding a bike, but so quote unquote soft skills like empathy or communication skills in terms of like an articulation. Like those are all skills with, if you choose to want to get better at it and you practice it deliberately, your brain has the capacity to do so, but it's you putting in the effort, I guess. So I think that's very powerful for coaching, is when people say like, oh, but I'm just not good at business, or I'm not good at cold calls, or I'm not a people person. I'm like, you may not be strong in that skill set now. Your brain's capable of it if you do desire to get better at it, because if you do, your brain can handle it if you choose to.
Mm. That's a very powerful message, I think, for anyone who wants to shift and change, right? Just the practice of, creating new neural network pathways.
Hmm.
So Hayden, oh my gosh, I feel like we could talk forever, and it feels like in some ways we just got started, but we're actually coming to time. So I wanted to ask, looking back on your journey, what sort of things have surprised you the most?
Mm. I think if you recall at the beginning of our session, which was many minutes ago, which flew by the way, Yasmin, what a wonderful conversation. If you recall, what I talked about is I started my journey wanting to make an impact on teenagers and coaching young people. And what surprised me, I think, is during that journey, the parents of these teenagers were noticing such amazing impacts on their kids. All of a sudden, their kids were more motivated, more excited, more talking about their passions and their values and like even limiting beliefs and talking about how they're learning to change a limiting belief into an empowering belief. And then the parents were noticing such great things happening to their kids. The parents started asking me if I worked with adults, if I worked with teams, if I worked with executives. And then now, fast forward to present day, I work with CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world. And what surprises me is that it all started with my passion to help young people. But then it grew to just wanting to make a bigger impact on the world. And from that sense, I believe that there's no there's no ceiling to our potential. There's no ceiling to what we could do if you just really love what you do and continue to really get good at it and practice it and talk about it. There's no ceiling to what you can do. And I think that's a big surprise that if you would have asked me when I first started my coaching journey, I would not be thinking I would be coaching CEOs in some of the top companies in the world. Um, but I believe my passion for helping people become the most best fulfilled version of themselves is what's taking me so far.
Hmm. That's such a powerful story and journey that you've been on, and it's clear to see that you're a top coach in the space of business because of all the work that you've done, and also all the perception that you've had working with teenagers, working with teams, and then just all the modalities from the Enneagram to neuroscience. So it's just clear that you're, a master of your craft, and it's been an absolute joy to have this conversation, Hayden. Are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you? Are you taking coaching clients, or are there classes people can take to learn more from you?
Yeah, well, the best place to find me is my website, which is haydenlee.com, HAYDENLEE.com. And on that website, yes, I do take one-on-one clients. Right now, I mostly work with like leaders who have a proven track record of success, but they know they have more in them to create even more success and fulfillment. But they're ready to do the work. They got to have a desire to do more of that deep transformational work. So haydenlee.com is a great place to start. I do have an Enneagram series on YouTube. So my YouTube channel is simply Hayden Lee Coaching. You can find an Enneagram series where I actually interview each of the 9 Enneagram types and I go into deeper details about the Enneagram. And I want to recommend one of the best Enneagram assessments out there, I believe. It's called the Integrative Enneagram. And their website is integrative9.com. Integrative, INTEGRATIVE, and then the number 9, so integrative9.com. So when people go out there and Google Enneagram, you'll find that there's a lot of different assessments out there, and some of them are free. And I believe if to take a free one is a good place to start, but oftentimes they may not be as valid or accurate. So I think taking a free one is a good place to start. But for those who are really wanting to do deeper work and have a really scientific, valid one, it costs more, obviously, to take a really good one that's been scientifically assessed, but the integrative 9 is one of the top ones on the market for those who are really ready to invest a little bit and kind of do deeper work. And then, of course, working with an Enneagram practitioner, going over your results is actually the best way to really do some of that deep Enneagram work. And lastly, mastermindinstitute.com is where I do the work with the 2 neuroscientists, where we teach coaches how to use neuroscience in their work. And that website is simply mastermindinstitute.com.
Amazing. Cool. And we'll leave the links in the show notes. If you send them over, we'll definitely leave them for our audience. Hayden, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing, and I just really enjoyed this conversation. I feel very inspired to do a little bit more due diligence in the world of the Enneagram. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, of course. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about the Enneagram with Hayden Lee. And you could tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.